a app I'm working on, but it wasn't really it's not really um, it's not a complete app. So I started working on a generative AI application I call Polyglot AI. And then as I was going along, I was sitting there thinking, um, let's see, test database. Okay. So I do some little queries. So it's not a huge deal there. The big thing was this test database. I was having issues with getting the database to show up. But it's to try and help people learn how to learn new languages. So I've done a lot of work on the back end. And then I was thinking, well, how am I going to do the front end? I don't really see the point of having a web application do it, um, even though it seems to be the craze right now. I didn't feel like doing that. So I decided that I wanted to have a mobile app, but I wanted to have it work on Android, iOS, and desktop. So it's a multi-platform app. So I decided, okay, I'll use Kotlin multi-platform. And then I got thinking about Jetpack's multi-platform Compose. So I've used Compose, I've used Swift UI, comfortable with both, but I've never used Jetpack's multi-platform Compose. So I decided I'll use that with a library called sqldelight because I need a SQL database. Problem right now in the Kotlin multi-platform area is there isn't too many options for databases. I don't like Realm. I don't like. I just don't like the way that they force their design on you. Um, Room is, I think, just Android only. I used to have a key store database, but it's no longer supported, so I had to stop using that. There really is a short, so it came down to SQLite, and so I was like, fine. I've never used SQLite, but we have to try, so that's what I did. Problem is lots of version issues. So when I like this version, when I built this new version of my app, it wants me to use the Android plugin 8.11.2. That won't work. In order for this application to work, I had to use 8.10.0. If you try and use something newer, I might be okay with 8.10.1 or something like that, but I can't use 8.12, 8.13, 8.11. Those won't work. With trying to use the Kotlin multi-platform Compose, and the sqldelight, you have lots of version limitations. So that's what this is really about. Is I'm trying to help with that. One of the things that I noticed a little bit ago, which I haven't really dealt with yet, you'll see here that I have Kotlin datetime. Okay, so if you're going to be using datetime functions, you're going to want to use Jetpack's Kotlin datetime. Okay, so let's see here, or JetBrains, sorry, JetBrains Kotlin. So you'll see that you're going to be using a lot of the JetBrains packages because it's going to work better with multi-platform. Reason that I have used their version is because, um, like on OS, I can't use some of the datetime functions because they want to use the Java library. It doesn't exist on iOS, so that was a problem. I could have written my own, but what's the point? I'll just use Jetpacks. So that's what I did. So you'll see all these sqldelight things here, and they all use the same version, which right now what I found works is 2.2.1. I'm hesitant to go to 2.3 because I might have some other version problems. This was about almost a week's worth of fighting trying to figure out versions. So you can look at the different versions I have here. It may help you when you go to do it yourself. Okay. Then I have lots of libraries, and then all my plugins. Okay. So you'll end up having lots of different little things like this that'll be handy. So the reason I was pointing that out, by the way, about is because if I go look up here, you'll see here, it's complaining that I'm actually going to be using 0.6.0 because I had already defined it once and I had forgotten I had defined it. Don't want to take it out right now because I don't feel like resyncing it before this video. Not that important. Some other things you'll learn. If you use any IDE, if you use any AI stuff to help you with programming, they're going to want to use an older version of like the clock and the instant variable class. So you'll want to update it to the Kotlin datetime. So that'll be an issue. And I had to use the Jetbrains version of the material icons. That was a pain to figure out also. So, and then here I have the different Android drivers for sqldelight. So that way it could work in the different places. So I have it here and here. So you'll end up needing to put these in those places. So what you'll do, the very first thing you'll do is you'll just get it to run with just sqldelight. You want it to just compile. So you'll build your program, or you'll create a new one. You'll then say, okay, well, let me just take something like this, and then I would just go over to here, and I would, I'm not going to be running it, but I would just put it down here. Okay. You tell it what the database is called, the package name. So you give it lots of information here. This I ended up having to do later, after the fact, because I ended up needing it. But you don't have to have this initially, if I remember, but you might as well put it in there just because it probably won't hurt. So then you tell it where to put all your directories. So you'll see that I have everything under common main sqldelight. My schemas go here. I have it set to generate a async database. For iOS, I actually had to make it synchronous. So just because I wanted an async database for as a general rule, it won't always work. You'll sometimes get compiler errors if you try and do that. So you'll then have to just go to having a synchronous, and let's see. I forgot where I put, oh, it's probably under database. Okay, so I think I actually need this one to be synchronous. So you'll see, and then the error goes away. So you'll see, if you see an error like what I had there, and it doesn't seem to make sense. So if you see this error and it's it's a type mismatch. Change it to synchronous, the error goes away. So that's just a little heads up. So what you do is I created my polyglot database.sq file. You can use a VS Code, I think, has a extension for it also. But one thing about sqldelight, it doesn't understand Boolean for columns. So you could use a Boolean adapter. I found it easier after fiddling around with it for a bit to just bypass that altogether, and I just use integers. And then it made my life simpler. It's it's extra bytes, but for me it was worth it. So it depends on how fussy you're going to be about that. And so you create your tables, you create your indexes. So I have quite a few tables. And then you also add in all of the queries you're going to make available. So insert user profile, get all user profiles, update, delete. For learning content, I have basically the same kind of pattern, but I also have get favorite content, get learning content by language. So you'll have lots of different queries you're going to want to use. This becomes important because it will actually, when you run the application, it will actually, so at that point, all you want to do is have it create the database. That's it. And by the way, that's why in the beginning I had a option for just checking to see if the database is connected, because that was how I was trying to tell, did I create a database? And so in my case, what I did was I said test the database, and so I would just actually make a query to see is it working. So I have my test database section here, and then I can go and I can see is it working. So you'll want to get it to that point just so you know, okay, it created something. This won't work yet, actually, because now you have to, what you wanted to do is you wanted to create the schemas. So remember I said, so I'm here. Oh. So I want to go to, actually it might just be in here. Nope. Oops. Just looking for my schema definitions. Find name dash name schema. Okay, it didn't make it. I thought it would, but told to, but it didn't. Oh well. So it's going to create. Oh, this, by the way, is how I try to do the Boolean thing. This seemed to work, kind of, but it was a pain to get it to work. It's not worth it for me, so I was like, we'll just move on without it. So, and then I have my database driver factory. You'll see it's an expect. So I'm expecting that everything will create this, so I can create the driver on that platform. So much like with Compose Multiplatform or with Kotlin Multiplatform, you'll be using expect and actual in lots of places. So this is how I did. So this is my coin stuff that I did. You're going to use coin quite a bit. And so you don't need this right now. But this is rather important. So you'll create your database module. I created a module for repositories, views, common, stuff like that. So you'll want to do something like that. And then you create your repositories. So this is where you start connecting what they automatically generated with, and what they automatically generated tends to be in here. Okay. So, for example, this is their database stuff. And so this you don't want to modify. The code will do that. And then it will also do, I always forget where it is, but there's a, oh, I forgot about something. Versions here. So for your Gradle version, you'll want to use nothing newer than 8.12.1. It will keep telling you that you can go to newer. Don't. Again, you're trying to balance Jetpack multi-platform, Compose, or Kotlin multi-platform with Jetbrains Compose multi-platform with sqldelight plugin. And so you'll need to use an older version of everything to make it work. So don't try, that's why I was showing what you have over here, because then you have to start downgrading a lot of stuff in order to make this work. So just something to be aware of, and that's the whole point for this video, by the way, is that. So I have some little utilities I did. This is kind of important. So you'll see that I'm using Kotlin time instant. A lot of time, if you use an like generative AI, OpenAI, or any of those, they'll want you to use Kotlin X I think it's datetime.instant. Doesn't seem to work as well. So I ended up using Kotlin time instant, but that's why I had to use the JetBrains datetime library, because I need a way to be able to have it work with, this needs to work with the Kotlin X.datetime.instant. And that library will actually handle the versioning. So it'll make your life easier. So that way you can keep everything as what the newer version is, and you don't have to deal with it so much. So I had some little helpers here. And then you create your repositories. This is important, was I had to find this, and that's what I was actually going to be looking for. I think I had it somewhere farther back here. There we go. So this is also automatically generated. So you'll want to find your queries file, and then you'll be using it. It's in com. In my case, it's under the database. But my problem is that I don't see it, because see, I'm here. I see this. This is saying it's there. Oh, I know why, because it's in the automatically generated area. I always forget that there's a place where it puts things that it generated. Yeah. So that might be what this is. Yeah, I guess so. Okay. So this schema part is important. That's why I had this open. So you'll see all this, and it's all under here. So this is all what things that it generated. So it creates a lot of classes for me. You'll end up using these. So you'll create your own data classes, and then you'll just have to use these also. So these are automatically generated by sqldelight. Okay. So if there's something wrong here, you go change this code. Whoops. Oh, I'm in the wrong place now. You go change the code that you created, and then when you rerun it, it will automatically generate these the new changes here. Okay. And then you'll reference this for your repository. So your repository, so what you pass in your in your queries is going to be this. This is what it knows. This is what matches the database. Your domain classes, data classes, aren't necessarily going to be this. And you don't necessarily want it to be because you want to make it something that will work better with your program. Remember, these are very table-centric. What you have in your up here is not going to be table-centric. Okay? So you're going to want to, you need to make a break between the two. So then we come here. So I just have I called it Q. Just my queries. And then I just implement my functions that will map between what my program wants and what the database generated. So for example, insert learning content is what is the query that the database knows. I'm in the learning content repository, so I just say upsert. Okay. I can say get by ID, and I know that is to getting learning content by ID. So you don't have to keep them one-to-one, and you probably shouldn't. Okay, why should I have to type get learning content, delete learning content, when I could just call delete if I'm in the learning content repository? So you'll want to do that also. Okay, and that's basically it. I have lots of these repositories, and hopefully this will help some people with some of the struggles that I had with versioning. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be much on the internet to make this all easier. So have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.